What's up, Banter fam? I'm here with Jose from Delphi Digital. Today, we're going to be discussing all about the crypto markets, DeFi, altcoins, layer twos, and more. We've got some awesome topics lined up for today's interview, which is part one. And we're also going to be doing a part two as well to discuss some other altcoin stuff. So, Jose, welcome to the channel.
Hey, Mas, thanks very much for having me.
So I did an interview with you, I think it was like 6 months ago, and we went into a lot of the like the basic fundamentals of your investing, your strategy. I want to focus more on current events in today's podcast, because obviously a lot has happened since then. So I wanted to get an update from you. Like, what are your thoughts right now in terms of where we're sitting in the market, kind of in a weird low volatility period with people hanging on for this Bitcoin spot ETF approval?
Yeah, definitely a bit of a weird sort of period. I think this is kind of always the case with like bear markets, where it starts with kind of like fear and panic and volatility, and then it kind of gets like it continues with like indifference almost, right? Where the market really slows down, volatility goes away, people start to think, and that's when people really start to think it's dead, and like it kind of drives people insane, especially trader types who just get like wrecked with the chop. From my perspective, there's loads of cool stuff happening in the background. I mean, I think infrastructure is progressing really well. There's now like multiple options for devs to launch applications in ways that are like very scalable. There's a lot of development happening on the application front as well, although it's like largely unseen. But like there's billions of dollars raised for crypto games. We like invested a lot into crypto games, so we get kind of a sneak peek, and pretty exciting some of the stuff that's going on in the background there. I think like DeFi gets a lot of hate, and obviously he's been in a famous Degen Spartan kind of 36-month bear market, but I think DeFi has shown like how resilient it is throughout everything that happened here, both with Curve and with the stuff in 2022 too. So overall, I think we're in like pretty good spot. Yeah, I mean, obviously Bitcoin ETF would be huge, but I think there's like enough kind of natural momentum from stuff that's being built that yeah, I'm pretty bullish from where I'm sitting.
Amazing. Yeah, I want to ask you about some of those like protocols and altcoins specifically. But first, just touching on the ETF once again, what are your thoughts on the implications? How do you view it overall affecting like the Bitcoin flow structurally?
Yeah, I don't know that I have like a particularly interesting or good take on this. I think it'll make it much easier for external money to enter into Bitcoin. And it will also kind of like be a stamp of approval for Bitcoin from TradFi. And like once you have like obviously BlackRock itself has like $10 trillion under management, and I think there's multiple spot ETFs filed by like massive entities. And once they start putting their marketing dollars behind it, and you're kind of like aligned with them, it kind of changes the game for Bitcoin a little bit. It makes it much more unstoppable. And then, I mean, obviously, what we always see with Bitcoin is if Bitcoin, like a lot of the bull runs kind of start with Bitcoin, and then people move, like take their Bitcoin gains and move further out the risk curve to ETH, and then from ETH to alts, right? So it should be very kind of positive for the entire crypto market. But I also think a Bitcoin ETF kind of makes an ETH ETF like inevitable from my perspective, and it'll just take a bit longer, and so that'll be super positive too. I think once, like if TradFi likes Bitcoin, I think they're gonna love ETH with like a yield and deflationary narrative and all this stuff. I think it's gonna, yeah. So I think it's very positive, and obviously like the approval is likely to coincide with like the halvening, which is just like I think gonna end up being like pretty explosive, explosive combo. So yeah, I don't have like a very original take, but yeah, I think it's obviously very bullish.
Well, I want to touch on the second half of what you were saying just there, like referencing like Ethereum and how it could potentially lead to an ETH ETF as well. I want to refer to a tweet that I did yesterday, kind of listing some of the reasons why I'm personally bullish on ETH. So we're seeing, I feel like, a shift in the market, like with a lot of L1s rebranding to like ETH L2s. Obviously, the layer two TVL keeps increasing. And you also have specific ETH catalysts that are on the horizon. You could think of like EIP-4844 as one. We'll probably discuss later. But like generally, just there's a lot of bullish momentum for Ethereum. Do you see this trend continuing? Like, what do you think this means for the overall layer 1, layer 2 landscape? Because it just seems like, there's just a lot of momentum for Ethereum that continues to be built.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's hard to deny that ETH has like all the momentum right now. Like it's proven to be kind of like Lindy to some extent. Like it's survived. It has L2s now, which have a lot of like cheap block space. Obviously Coinbase choosing ETH and the optimism stack was pretty big as well. You're seeing stuff like PayPal deploy their stablecoin on ETH, and ETH really become like the settlement sort of network. I think like what I think that says for all L1s is kind of similar to what I've been saying for a while, that I think all L1s really need a strong reason to exist, as in they need to sort of innovate on a dimension where they're like 10x better than ETH, right? Like it's not enough to be a little bit faster, to have a little bit better user experience. You really need to be kind of like 10x better to have a reason to exist. And so I still think there are a few layer 1s that fit that description. When we can talk about that. But then I also think like with ETH, it's sort of similar to like the Bitcoin maxis in kind of the bear market of like 2018, 2019, where it suddenly became trendy to be a Bitcoin maxi, right? Mm-hmm. It was kind of like the status quo, like it was kind of like the obvious take. Like Bitcoin's digital gold, Ethereum is a scam, like ICOs are all scams. The only use case for cryptocurrency is like self-sovereign money, or like, you know, digital self-sovereign store of value. Everything else doesn't exist. And I think that was wrong then. And I think being an ETH maxi is sort of wrong on a similar dimension now. Like I think there is space for other L1s although obviously ETH has the lead and is like the most likely to succeed, but I think there's going to be room for other L1s too. It's just that in a bear market, like people don't want to bridge outside of ETH. There's also been like a lot of bridge hacks over the years, which by the way, L2s aren't immune to that, right? Like the bridges, the L2 bridges are called trustless bridges, but they, like all the hacks on existing bridges were pretty much either smart contract or like signature hacks, right? Both of which could affect layer 2 bridges. So yeah, I think people are scared of bridges. There's also like a wealth effect where ETH has like the richest sort of like the biggest wealth effect as a community, and ETH people want to support like ETH aligned projects, so that they like venture out to layer 2s much more readily than they do to all L1s. And so I think all of that contributes to Ethereum looking really strong right now, and layer 2s looking like super strong right now too.
It was quite interesting. We saw 𝗕𝗬𝗕𝗬𝗪, I think in a podcast with The Block, talk about how Phantom might like spin up an optimistic roll up, essentially like, I guess, joining this Ethereum wave. Although he made a comment that I want to get your opinion on about layer 2s, like Arbitrum, Optimism, etc., like not even being layer 2s. He's like, well, they're side chains. They're not scaling anything. Would you agree with that statement?
Like these definitional kind of debates or like semantic debates end up getting pretty heated. It's also, I think, a symptom of the bear market. I think, like, you know, the John Charbonneau post about what is a layer 2, what is a sidechain. I think, I do think eventually layer 2s do become sidechains to some extent. Like they will need, because like right now they still have like effectively like a multi-sig governing at least the bridge portion, right? I mean, a lot of them have multi-sig governance for everything, for all upgrades. Some of them have it just for the bridge, but it's hard to see how they can fully get rid of that, because they need to be able to make changes and upgrades and stuff like that. And at the same time, if you like right now, it's sort of a single sequencer. If you decentralize a sequencer, then you need some kind of consensus, right? Some way to arrive at like consensus of the order of the transactions. Even if you don't need it for security, you still need it to kind of order the transactions. And then you also have situations where, like, what if a hack happens on a layer 2 right now, right? Like, what if the Arbitrum bridge gets hacked or something like that? Does ETH actually fork to like, so I think it's like social consensus sort of all the way down. So I do think L2s eventually sort of become like, they inherit Ethereum's security, like consensus level security, but they do have their own like trade-offs and consensus, I think, eventually, that makes them, somewhat of a side chain.
And if that's the case, what other L1s you mentioned before, like you think there will be other L1s that can carve out their own niches? What ones are you looking at? I know you've spoken a bit about Solana in the past on the show. You've spoken a bit about Atom. That's something I think in part 2 we'll touch on a little bit more. But yeah, what L1s are you seeing that are, I guess, differentiated? 𝗕𝗍𝗕𝗄𝗧 now coming into the market. There's all sorts of new ones like Sei, which have more of a trading focus. Lots happening, but which ones can step in here? Hold on. Before Jose tells us about his favorite layer 1 cryptos, I want to give a quick shout out to one of our show partners, SmarDex, who are partnering with Crypto Banter to give away an airdrop of 1 Ethereum every single week to a liquidity provider. So basically, SmarDex is a DEX which offers pretty insane APRs on their LP pools. I'll just go across some of the pools now so you can have a look. Across Arbitrum, you can see their ARBUSDC pool is paying 27%. Their SDEX pool with ETH is paying over 106%. If you go into the BNB chain, you can also see they have USDT and BNB paying 30%, their Bitcoin and SDEX paying 92%, and so on, with pretty massive multipliers, as you can see via the column in the right. So basically, they are paying some of the highest yields in crypto right now. And if you deposit into any one of their liquidity pools across Polygon, Arbitrum, or BNB, you will be eligible to win a 1 Ethereum airdrop, which we are going to give away here on the show. Simply, all you need to do is deposit a minimum of $50 into any of the pools on any of the networks apart from Ethereum. Once you've deposited a minimum of $50 in liquidity into one of these pools, then you can come and submit your wallet address. Once you've submitted, then I will go through on the show and pick a random winner to win a 1 Ethereum airdrop, which is about $1,850. So just remember how liquidity pools work. You still own the assets, you still own the Bitcoin that you stake. You're simply earning yield on those coins on the SmarDex platform, and you will not only earn the yield, which can be a great opportunity to get some passive income going, but you can also qualify for the airdrop, and we're going to be giving away some cool prizes on the show. So link in the description to SmarDex if you would like to provide liquidity. Now to Jose for his response.
Yeah, I'm very bullish on Solana. I think Solana has like a differentiated both sort of like product market fit in terms of the tech, but also like a differentiated community. I think the Solana vision of the world is scalability. First of all, like obviously a highly scalable chain, and rather than sort of fractionalizing fragmenting state with all these layer 2s or with app chains or whatever, Solana is like a world of like completely shared state, which allows for like much greater kind of composability. And I think that vision has a lot of merit. Like I think there clearly like a lot of the coolest stuff that happens in crypto is enabled by composability, whether it's yield farming or a lot of the DeFi stuff or things like that. And I think as of right now, Solana is really the front runner in that like monolithic world. And like monolith has become kind of a negative word when I think partially because of how strong like the modular thesis has become. But like monolith, as kind of the multi-coin guys point out, is also like known as integrated in the traditional world. And that's like a good thing, right? Being able to, it's much easier to deploy an application on a monolith where you get data availability and consensus and even like stuff like wallet integrations and everything kind of bundled in than spinning up your own app chain. And so I think like that's like one side of the spectrum for me that I think in the monoliths and like the integrated thesis, I think Solana has a huge lead. Aptos, I think, is in my opinion like a little bit lost. I don't know the ecosystem well enough to really have like a strong opinion. So, but my impression as from a distance is just a little bit like of a kind of boomer take to BD, and sort of like not very crypto native. And although the tech is good, I just don't see a lot of interesting ecosystem stuff happening there. Like the projects that we've seen raising there haven't been particularly interesting. I think 𝗬𝗎 is slightly better in that respect. Like we've seen more interesting high quality projects on 𝗬𝗎, both on the gaming side and on the DeFi side. And also from developers we talk to, they like have a preference for 𝗬𝗎 tech stack over 𝗕𝗏𝗏𝗧. But I'd still say Solana's like much like far ahead of both of them in terms of both community and that's the other thing with Solana is it's a very differentiated community. Like the ETH people are like researchers, kind of mad scientist types, libertarians, and the Solana community is much more like high frequency traders from Chicago, and then like Web2 entrepreneurs, right? That just want to build like high throughput like applications that kind of can be used in the real world. Yeah. And then other than that, I'm bullish sort of Cosmos, not Atom, but like Cosmos kind of like app chain thesis. And that's just because I think there's going to be a lot of use cases that benefit from customizability at the chain level, like being able to customize and launch your own chain that's completely tailored to your use case. I think a good example here is DYDX V2, which should be launching soon. And I think if you want to do that, Cosmos SDK is like by far the best way to do that. By far the best way to kind of launch your own chain. And I think over the next year, we're going to see a few interesting launches that kind of show the power of Cosmos SDK. I think 𝗧𝗍 is definitely one of them, like really impressive team. It's going to be one of the fastest chains. They also understand BD and under like very crypto native. I think Anoma is one of them, obviously at the center of like this intense kind of narrative that's going on, and also privacy. So their first application is 𝗕𝗏𝗏𝗧, which is going to offer like private, like shielded swaps on osmosis. And then obviously DYDX is like a huge one where these guys had the most successful, arguably one of the most successful applications in ETH land, and chose to kind of throw it all away, and not throw it all away because the application is still running, but like start from scratch, basically building their own chain with Cosmos SDK. So I think that kind of shows like the power of the stack. And so, yeah, I think there's going to be a bunch of launches that kind of, and those are like on opposite ends of the narrative spectrum, right? One is like app chain, which is you can like control your block space and customize your own consensus and stuff like that. And the other is Solana, where very easy to deploy an app, highly scalable, and like single shared state, basically.
Do you think the DYDX launch will succeed? Because there's been a lot of speculation about how, I guess, audacious the attempt is, basically rewriting their entire protocol.
Yeah, it's really audacious. Like writing your entire protocol, launching your own chain, inventing this new kind of like in-memory order book. There's a lot of moving parts. I think we're investors in DYDX, so like biased, but I think that's like one of the best teams in crypto, one of the best and like most ambitious teams in crypto. So I'm pretty bullish on them being able to succeed.
Yeah, I had Jordy on for an interview I think it was a week ago, and he was saying how if it pays off, there could be a huge reward at the end, and if it fails, well, then there will be a lot of competition that'll catch up quickly. So I think it's a pretty pivotal moment for them. But yeah, some of the stuff they're trying to do is, I think, pretty cool. I think now I want to discuss some DeFi stuff, some relevant stuff. So I had you on my space to talk about Curve. I don't want to talk about Curve too much today because I think that's kind of already at least played out. But I want to talk about Base because this is really the talk of the town right now. It's all over my Twitter feed. Everyone's talking about Base protocols. Everyone's speculating on friend tech profiles. It's been a crazy day in Baseline. So I wanted to just get firstly your broad opinion on Base and what you think of it.
Yeah. Like someone somewhere, I don't remember who, described it as like BSC for white people, which I think is like an apt metaphor. I think like Base is cool. Obviously you get the advantage of like Coinbase brand and Coinbase customers. Like Coinbase historically has been kind of on and off in terms of products. Like their 𝗕𝗏𝗄 product and their NFT products kind of sucked, but their wallet I tried recently is pretty good. So yeah, and I think their execution on Base has been interesting, like kind of launching on a weekend and then having like, you know, 8 figures of capital bridge in, and only to get rugged on a coin, on a meme coin called Bald, you know, referencing the CEO's bald head is an interesting like BD strategy. I don't like, in terms of tech, it's just like another optimism, right? But, and so I don't know how many L2s we can have, like EVM compatible L2s, leveraging like similar tech stacks. And I don't know how many of them are going to end up having their own ecosystem, right? Like does Base need its own AMM, its own credit protocol, its own _PERPs protocol? Does Optimism need their own, or is it just like that Aave ends up deploying on all of them and winning on all of them, and Uniswap does the same, and this kind of stuff? I think that's also why I'm more interested in kind of environments that allow you to do stuff that hasn't been done before, and I kind of don't see that with Base or with. I think the advantage of Base is just reach and user base, which is a massive advantage. But I don't see really any of the L2s as environments where you can do like fundamentally new stuff that you couldn't do elsewhere. And so I think I'm kind of like wondering how this ends up, because like everyone is deploying an L2. Like, you know, are we just going to have a million L2s all with their own like ecosystems and fragmented liquidity, or is there going to be a winner? And if so, like, what does that look like?
So many L2s. Like, yeah, I had to look at the funding stats. It's mind blowing. Like the biggest funding is going towards L2s. We've got like Starknet, ZK Sync, you've got Scroll, you've got Linear, and then that's already like, you know, notwithstanding Polygon, Arbitrum, Optimism. Now we've got Base. I mean, just it's crazy the amount of layer 2s in the market. I want to touch on the ramifications of Base though, because you touched on a point that Coinbase has a lot of users and it has a lot of sway in the industry, and they will have their Web3 wallet, and I think they've already integrated it straight from the Coinbase platform to Base, which there should be some like liquidity / user flow into Base from that. Would you maybe view it, because of Coinbase's like advantage from that perspective, as more of a negative for maybe the other L2s? So like Base might just come in and just steal market share, and the losers will be, you know, maybe a Polygon or an Arbitrum. And do you think Base could be the winner and some of these other ones end up being affected just because they can't compete with Coinbase?
Yeah, I think so. I certainly think like they're all competing for the same kinds of users. And I think Coinbase has the biggest reach of all of them. Obviously, Polygon and some of the others have done a great job with BD. They all have like their own communities. But I definitely think Base competes most directly with those chains, and yeah, and I think there's going to be more launches as well. Like more people are going to be launching L2s, and yeah, that's
why so many L2s? Why do we need so many L2s?
I don't think we need so many L2s. I mean, yeah, there's a question as to how much throughput like L2s actually enable as well, and whether you'll end up having like a world of kind of like the Cosmos thesis, but on Ethereum with a bunch of like app specific L2s, like rollups or enshrine, you know, all the whole modular thesis. Yeah, but in terms of like these general purpose L2s, I don't think we need this many of them. I think people are launching them because a lot of those you mentioned have been building for like years, actually.
Yeah.
You know, like we first invested in Arbitrum like years ago, same with ZK Sync. And they've been grinding for years, since like before people even kind of thought L2s could become a reality. But yeah, L2s make a lot of money right now, right? Like they make a lot of money, and it's the narrative. It's arguably the narrative with the most traction in crypto right now. So it kind of makes sense.
Do you think things will flip maybe next bull run, where like the need for block space comes back, and we realize, well, maybe they are limited. Maybe we do need more composability. And then people are like, shit, well, Atom offers this, Solana offers this. Well, not Atom, Cosmos, rather, the ecosystem. Do you think that could play out next bull run?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think that's what's interesting about Solana for me, is that it really does enable more than what like the current crop of L2s do in terms of like scalability and throughput, and can also like sort of implement L2s if it wants to, right? And kind of has its own ecosystem there. But like, yeah, I think that's what has to happen for them to succeed. There have to be like unique applications that could only exist there, that launch there in the next bull run. Otherwise, L2s, I think, will just continue to like absorb capital. Because yeah, if the only things that we need are like the things that already exist on L1, but faster and cheaper, then I think L2s are clearly the winner.
Yeah, so I want to kind of segue now into the final section of part one here and ask you, yeah, what are some of those applications that you think can drive that next wave of users, not just onto Solana? Obviously, you can talk about Solana specific coins, but also other layer ones, individual protocols, but also more like ideas, because there are big problems in DeFi today, right? That I think are going to be solved next cycle. So what are some of those solutions?
Yeah. So I think there's a bunch of.
It's a broad question.
Like,
I guess we can start with
question.
like maybe one of the biggest problems that you're seeing in the market and some of the interesting solutions to it. So we can break down like, DEXs and the other ones.
Yeah, I mean, I think some areas that are interesting are like crypto native. So I think broadly you can think of like applications of kind of two types. Like some of them are sort of bridging the real world and crypto world in some way. And that's stuff like stable coins, stuff like neobanks, stuff like real world assets. And I think those are interesting and will continue to grow. And then there's entirely crypto native applications, which I would consider things like AMMs, things like crypto native, like money market protocols and these kinds of things. And I think there's like a mixture of both that are happening and that are interesting. So like, I do think eventually most like stocks, bonds, commodities, pump sold line are going to be on chain, and we're seeing like really cool stuff happen there. Both people tokenizing treasuries, which like makes sense as the first killer app given the yield there, but also people working on tokenizing like real estate and making real estate finance like available on chain, and other stuff like that. I think kind of the Flux model was an interesting one as well, like a kind of a breakthrough for people where you can use these treasuries as part of DeFi, as part of a money market. And then I think another interesting opportunity there is kind of like a crypto native neobank. Like we invested in a project called 𝗕𝗏𝗄𝗏, and the idea is just like crypto, especially stable coins and fiat dollars should be fungible, right? But they just aren't. Like it's very difficult and getting more difficult, right? As we were kind of talking before the podcast started, in many parts of the world, to go from fiat to crypto and from crypto to fiat. It's like it's extremely difficult. It's also difficult to spend your crypto, and so I think solutions that make that much easier to manage, like crypto native sort of like neobanks, make a lot of sense too. I think that'll eventually enable like payments, payroll, and a bunch of other solutions, which like basically building a financial stack for like crypto companies that still need to interact with and crypto users that still need to interact with the real world. So I think that's super interesting. And then I also think there's going to be more like legal fi, so like kind of legal services, like on-chain legal services for DAOs that need to interact with the real world, like what Maker's doing, but also like every single sort of DAO has these multi-sigs that are just like random people, sometimes anons that are managing protocols worth like billions of dollars. I think all that is going to be turned into like, or wrapped around legal entities with stuff like Borgs that 𝗕𝗏𝗄𝗏 from our team kind of pioneered. I think you're going to see a lot more of that. And then and then also games. Like I think games, like some games I would consider in that realm of like Web 2.5, like bridging the real world and crypto, and some are like purely on chain, but I think the majority is like Web 2.5. And yeah, there's some really cool games being developed by some like really like experienced game developers that I think are gonna blow people's mind. And I think enough money was invested that we'll get at least a handful of like big successes. And I think those are likely to be some of the things that drive most new users to crypto. Yeah. And then
yeah, gaming's something I was definitely gonna touch on in the second half, the part 2. I wanted to ask you quickly about the first point you made about real world assets, like tokenizing assets. Have you checked out Frax, what they're doing with treasury bills? Do you have an opinion on Frax? I'm interested because I had Drake on the show and he was a big Frax bull. So I wanted to know if you have one.
No, I haven't looked at what they're doing with treasuries. How does that work?
They're going to be implementing, I don't know exactly how it works, but they're going to be, well, obviously they've come out with their FraxLend protocol. I don't know if you've seen FraxLend.
Yeah.
And they're also going to be starting up with treasuries. So I guess they're going to be buying up treasuries, I think, using some of their assets. They'll have like some sort of pool, and yeah, they'll be earning a yield on those treasuries, paying back to Frax stakers. There's a lot of intricacies I don't know because I was just explained it 3 days ago, but that'll be an interesting kind of addition. So yeah, I reckon check that one out. Are you bullish on Frax?
Yeah.
Do you have an opinion, more broadly speaking, on Frax? Before Jose answers my question about Frax Finance, I want to give a shout out to one of our official exchange partners of the show, OpenX. OpenX has been pretty amazing with listing lots of new pairs onto their platform. In the past week alone, they've listed 2 of the most popular coins right now, Rollbit and Unibot, and they also have many other pairs, as you can see on their platform, like your Bitcoin, your Ethereum, your SHIB, and they're constantly listing new pairs. But they also just launched their new staking dashboard. So if you are an OX holder, which is their native token, you can now stake it to earn a yield. And remember that fees generated from the protocol are paid back, a percentage of that, to OX stakers. So stakers can actually benefit from the growth of the platform. And it is an exchange that I'm personally pretty bullish on. So obviously it's your decision whether you want to hold the token, but just in general, it's been a great exchange to trade on. And also it's quite unique because of their transparency model, which allows you to leverage other forms of collateral that you have in your MetaMask wallet to trade against on the exchange. For example, if you have 𝗕𝗏𝗄 in your wallet that is currently illiquid, you can actually put it up as collateral using their USD credit system, and in exchange leverage against it to trade. So on most exchanges you need to trade against stablecoin, whereas on OpenX you can use illiquid assets like your 𝗕𝗏𝗄, your Rollbits, all these degen coins. So I think it's going to be an amazing exchange for all the degens out there. So if you want to get involved, submit an FTX claim, trade, and use the platform, there is a link in the description. And of course, their new staking dashboard is now live if you are a holder of OX and want to earn some yield off that token. So without further ado, let's get back to Jose's response on Frax Finance.
I think it's a really good team. Like the rate at which they build and continue to build, and like with a relatively small team as well, is super impressive. The thing with most decentralized stablecoins, maybe including DAI, is that they're not really being used as stablecoins, right? They're mainly like almost like yield instruments. Very few people are using them to like pay for things or transact or anything like that. And so they end up being like more like sources of more like a byproduct of like generating on-chain yield or doing lending and stuff like that. And I think what they will end up kind of realizing is that in order to make a stablecoin work, you have to really build the ecosystem around it that makes people want to use it. And that's what Frax is doing, I think, really well. Is like they have FraxLend and they built their liquid staking derivative and all this, and you need to build those products around it. But so far, I'm not really seeing too much evidence that any of them are kind of like succeeding and really being used as stablecoins. Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to ask you was about this whole neobank theory. I guess is it in a way like centralized DeFi? Because it's not true DeFi, right? Because to have on and off ramps, you need some sort of like centralized intermediary. So what's your opinion on like centralized DeFi, obviously with DeFi regulation as well?
Yeah, I mean, you have to, like to interact with the real world, you have to abide by real world regulations. But I think there's ways to connect the two in a crypto native way that make a lot of sense. Like, I don't know, the way I kind of envision it is, if any of you've ever used like Revolut or an app like that, where you have like your different currency accounts, a wallet is just kind of like another sort of like account, right? It's a different type of capital in that account. And the idea is like being able to bridge from your wallet into like a bank account and bank accounts in different currencies and vice versa, like very seamlessly. And also stuff like 𝗕𝗫𝗃𝗃 allows you to like be, kind of pay with your Visa debit card, like actually initiate a smart contract transaction with it. So I think there's going to be like more and more both technological ways and UX ways to make it so that, yeah, the neobank will obviously have to have like all the relevant licenses, and if they want to be an actual bank, they have to have a banking license and fulfill all those regulations. But there's still ways that they can integrate with crypto rails that make the experience like way more seamless. And I don't think anyone has like nailed that yet. I think exchanges are actually the neobanks of crypto. I think like most people treat like a centralized exchange or several as their banks, right? Like you have a bunch of capital on there. Maybe you have their debit card that you spend with. Maybe you use it to borrow and lend. You do all your
just so easy
capital management on there. It's very easy, right? And so I think it's inevitable that someone will nail that user experience in a way that allows you to kind of like seamlessly go from one to the other. And like I'm a user of some of the current crypto banks, and none of them are quite there, in my opinion, in terms of user experience.
Have you looked into 𝗲𝗏? They're kind of building kind of like a banking solution. They've got fiat integration too.
No, I haven't.
𝗲𝗏 might just be one to look into. That's the only one that came to mind when you mentioned like these kind of solutions. It's the only one I'm familiar with.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there are cool ones being built. I want to end this first part here because there's lots I want to discuss on the more like altcoin front in the next part. So for the people watching, we'll put up part 2 tomorrow. So after this, sorry to keep you hanging, but I wanted to split it up, make it a little more digestible. So yeah, thank you for joining, and well, I guess we'll see everyone else on the other side.
Yep.
I'll put in the exit outro to make it easy for our producers.